Are you a locums medical professional working in multiple states and not sure what your tax obligations are? In this video podcast, I'm going to be going over a real life example as well as what concepts do you need to be well aware of in order to answer that question, what taxes do you owe as a locums medical professional? Welcome to the Locum CPA podcast. My name is Stephen Lee, a CPA based out of Chicago, Illinois, working with locum medical professionals. In this video podcast, we're doing something a little bit different. We're answering a specific question, a real life question that I get very often. So let's get right into it. The question is, I'm interested in starting locums work for this year or in 2025. Does my LLC have to pay taxes to the state it is registered, even if all my work is done out of state? Okay, so we have a locums medical professional here where they're registered in state A, but all of their work is being done in state B, right? Or state C and D, right? Multiple states. We're going to answer that. We're going to break down the concepts that you need to be well aware of, and then also go over a real example later on in this podcast to really bring all these concepts together, okay? So let's get started. What are the two main concepts you have to be well aware of? Number one is, what are your tax responsibilities, right, as a locums medical professional? So when you register an LLC or a PLLC in a state, that state considers you a domestic LLC, or let's just call it like you are domiciled in that state, right? So your LLC has a presence, you have a presence, your business has a presence in that state. So you, on an annual basis, you at least have some type of reporting requirement or annual fee. Some states call it a franchise tax, like in California, there's a minimum that you will have to pay, even if you don't earn income there, right? Let's say you set up a PLLC or an LLC and you don't do anything in that PLLC or LLC. You don't have any income, you don't have any locums just yet for that year. Maybe you're planning to do it next year, but you registered and filed early. You'll still have some type of annual minimum reporting requirement or fee, just to make sure that it's consider that a maintenance cost to keep that LLC alive in that state. But you want to check if you do have activity, let's say you have locums work and you have income being funneled into that LLC or PLLC, then there might be a separate LLC tax on the profits of that LLC or PLLC. So you really have to make sure that you're consulting a CPA or someone that's knowledgeable in multi-state taxes, right? So you want to make sure you're doing that. The second is, where is the work actually done, right? In America, in the US, the tax system typically is you are taxed in the location where the services are being performed as a locums medical professional, right? So if you are working, let's say in Illinois and Minnesota, you're going to be subject to both Illinois and Minnesota tax. So always remember, if you're working in multiple states, you probably have to file multiple tax returns, one to each of those states. Okay, so something just to be well aware of, right? So remember, you are taxed where the work is being done, okay? Some states tax national or nationwide taxes, but you get a credit at the end of the day for taxes also paid in a separate state, so you're not double taxed. So you want to make sure you're talking to a knowledgeable CPA. So with these two concepts, where's your LLC registered or PLLC registered, as well as where's the work being done, let's go over an example to really tie this stuff together. Here are the facts. Let's say you're an oral surgeon. Okay, you're a locums medical professional, but your specialty is oral surgery. You live in Illinois, you have a wife, children, and you reside in Illinois when you're not working, okay? And you have locum engagements in both Illinois, your state of residence, as well as Minnesota, okay? So you are working in both Illinois and Minnesota. So let's review those facts here. You're an Illinois resident, you have a PLLC established in Illinois. You know, like I said back before, and I repeat to a lot of my clients, you typically want to set up an LLC or PLLC in the state of your residence, okay? But you want to consult a lawyer, right? So once again, your PLLC is established in Illinois in this example. The third is you have income earned in both Illinois and Minnesota for locums work. And number four is your PLLC has elected S Corp status to take advantage of all the benefits of being an S Corp shareholder, right, or S Corp tax. So your PLC has elected S Corp status. That's also a very common question, right? If you are an LLC or a PLC, are you an S Corp? That could be both, actually. There's something called a hybrid entity, where for legal purposes, you are an LLC or PLC. But for IRS or tax purposes, you have to file an S Corp tax return to take full advantage of all the great deductions and the advantages of being an S Corp. Okay, so once we have those facts established, what are your tax obligations? So the first one is you will need to file an S Corp tax return for federal, for Illinois, as well as Minnesota. You have 3 S Corp tax returns, one to the federal government, one to the state of Illinois, as well as one to the state of Minnesota. One thing you want to check for each state that you're working on is that you might need a state-specific tax ID to file a business return, like an S Corp tax return in that state. For example, in our example here, Minnesota actually has something called an S Corp state tax ID, right? That's a separate thing you have to apply for. It doesn't come automatically when you register with the IRS or with the state or your state of residency. You have to reach out to Minnesota. And I recommend actually you either do it online or you call them directly, let them know what you're doing, and they can sometimes take care of it over the phone for you in certain states. So you want to check each state. So once again, your S Corp tax filing requirement in this example would be federal, Illinois, and Minnesota, all 3 jurisdictions. So what taxes you pay for the S Corp? You'll only have to pay taxes in Illinois and Minnesota. Because remember, with an S Corp, you are considered flow-through, right? And that's a concept I go over in previous videos. But once again, for S Corp taxes for this video, always know that in this example, it's Illinois and Minnesota. The third is personal tax return. Where do you have to file, right? Even though in this example, they are an Illinois resident, do they only file in Illinois for personal taxes? The answer is no. They also have to file a non-resident Minnesota tax return, right, to report their Minnesota income. So for personal taxes, you have to file a federal, Illinois, and a non-resident Minnesota return. And then when it comes to taxes, same thing. This individual will pay federal taxes, Illinois taxes, as well as Minnesota taxes. So one really important concept to recognize here is that quarterly estimated taxes need to be paid in each state for the periods worked. Okay, you have to pay quarterly estimated tax payments. So that's why it's so important, once again, to consult a CPA and work with a CPA that's knowledgeable in these things. I have 3 very important recommendations here. Okay, the first is make sure you're compliant with each state that you work. Okay, you might need to register your LLC or PLC as a foreign entity if you're doing business in that state. So you really want to reach out to a knowledgeable lawyer or a legal professional who works with local medical professionals. So what I would say is one really practical recommendation is consult some of your colleagues who are also doing locums when you're on your engagements, right? Who do they use as a lawyer, as a CPA? And ask them, because they probably have gone through this, right? Or they're wondering the same thing, and they might have a really good referral to help you navigate this. The second recommendation is don't assume that by forming an LLC in a tax-friendly state that will shield you from all your other obligations. A tax-friendly state is something that is a state where there's no income tax, let's say, for example. Like Florida is a very good example, or Nevada or the state of Washington, right? There's certain states where there's no personal income tax return or personal income taxes or return. That doesn't mean you're shielded from all your other income tax obligations if you're working in different states, okay? So you want to double check that. And third, once again, is to outsource these tax filing obligations to a knowledgeable CPA, as well as a lawyer on the legal side, right? If you'd like to schedule a consult with myself, I'll leave a link in the information section below. So take a look and you can go ahead and schedule an appointment. All right, some quick tips for all you locum pros to really wrap this up here. The first one is track where and how long you've been working in each state, okay? You really want to track this and stay organized. And if you're working with a CPA that is knowledgeable in locums, they will be recommending and helping you with this, okay? So you want to make sure you're tracking where and how long you've been working in those states. The second one is file quarterly estimated taxes. You really want to make sure you're not surprised come April 15th, but you're filing quarterly estimated tax payments on a timely basis. Remember, some of you might be thinking, I can get away with not paying quarterlies and just paying it come April 15th. I'm okay with that. But there is something called interest and penalties that will be for the submission of late taxes, right? So you need to be, by law, submitting quarterly estimated tax payments. And third, once again, is to outsource. Do not try to DIY this yourself, right? Many times you as the local medical professional, whatever your specialty might be, you might have patients that come in or people that come in that says, I diagnosed myself, self-diagnosed myself, DIY'd it on Google or WebMD, right? That is the last thing you want to hear, right? As a medical professional, because you are the expert. Remember to outsource this stuff. You do not want to be doing this yourself and then fall behind and have that anxiety, knowing or thinking that you might have done it wrong. So you want to make sure you're doing this right. So make sure to outsource this to the professionals. Remember, if you found this video helpful or you have other questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I would love to hear your questions, right? About what you, as a local medical professional, what are some topics that you'd like me to cover in future videos? And if you made it this far, thank you so much for listening to this podcast or watching this podcast. And I hope you're doing well, and I will see you next time. Bye.